In this episode, we explore the concept of confidence and claiming who you say you are. We use new metaphors to explore old sensations, things that we've felt before, but we're looking at with new, fresh eyes. Welcome to the Plumb Podcast. This is a podcast for possibility.
We begin from a unique starting point and the conversation unfolds from there. We express authentically and we create the space for you to do the same.
Hi, I'm Rosalee.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are the Plumb Collective.
The starting point for this conversation came out of the Plumb Practice Series called Water, where we explore the energetic concept of flow. One thing that is so unique about the experience of writing together and having conversations about our writing is that our conversation ends up coming from and out of an experience. I think it's a really important distinction, talking about something versus writing from something and then having a conversation from there.
When we're writing from flow, and confidence is just this energetic concept that came out in the writing, it's a totally different experience to be in that kind of conversation versus being in a conversation where we're talking about confidence as if it's something over there. When we're writing from something, it's coming from us. It just shifts what's available and what's possible from a limited perspective to something that is just wide open and could be anything. It's limitless possibility.
Part of this experience is being a little uncertain for a second, but trusting that as the conversation unfolds, it will make sense. You can relax in the space of listening and witnessing and just allow what comes up for you to come up.
Our individual pieces of writing stand on their own. You could come up with what you believe that it means for yourself. We share with you what it meant to us and new ways of seeing ourselves, how impactful it can be to use a different word or a different metaphor to describe something that you felt for a long time. That it's similar to if a post was in your way and you moved slightly to the left, you would be able to see the whole thing without something obstructing your view. We explore every week in Plumb Practice. We write the words that are right there. We read them to ourselves. We read them out loud. And we talk about why those words were right there and what those words mean to us.
If you're interested in experiencing this starting point for yourself, the Plumb Practice series called Water is available for a purchase on our website. We also have a Plumb Practice membership, which allows you to receive a new session of Plumb Practice every week delivered to your email inbox.
We would love to have you be Plumb Practice members.
As you listen to our writing and conversation, you're going to hear metaphors, new definitions of words, bits of our personal experiences, and new ways of looking at things.
As you listen to the rest of this episode, here are some things to listen for. Who benefits if I undercut myself? It's a shift in my being, not a change in my doing. I can start from where I am.
This conversation meant a lot to us. We know that there is so much in here that's available for you as well. We're so excited to share it with you. Rosalee and I will read our writing aloud and have a conversation about our writing. When we read our writing, we read it in a special order. We read the bread first, then we read the meat of our writing. That's the 20 minutes of writing. And then we read the bread again. We call this our sandwich because it's bread, meat, bread. As you listen to our sandwiches, it's okay to listen as an observer, watching and hearing what's going on from the surface. But there is also the opportunity to listen more deeply as a witness. If you listen as a witness, listen for yourself. Notice what you sense and what you feel as you hear our words. Let your imagination come in. Take note of words or phrases that stand out to you if you want.
Okay, I'm going to begin with my bread first. An arrangement for mutual advantage, to take action with regard versus something chancy. There is always here. I know this week my job, my purpose, my task is to talk about expanding photo readings, which means I will talk about November 9th, 2022, which means talking about the experiment and the betrayal. Get the words out. I've talked about this so much. Why am I having trouble when it is time to talk about it? I am reminding myself I'm not trying to get to Friday. I'm already there by being here. Today, I had technical difficulties. TikTok glitched. I still can't see my comments, and all of my views went to 0. Videos refused to save on the app and on my camera roll. I recorded 5 different times. Only part of one video saved from over an hour of talking. I was here. I was with what is. I talked about the connections I see and feel about photo readings and my mom's gambling. I would not have logically thought that that would or could be a starting point to talking about the podcast, but there is always here. So I went with what was here. What was here was an entry of Joe Journal where my mother jokes about moving to Vegas to be a blackjack dealer. I envisioned that alternate universe for a second when I read it. She was a gambler, not a dealer. It feels like there is a message in that sentence. I'm the dealer. I set the tone. I command the table. I would have kicked my mother out of my casino if I could have. She doesn't play by the rules. Poor sport, bad behavior. Bouncer? Security? Remove this woman. I'm ready to receive the jackpot. There is always here. I'm here for fun. The game is already won. An arrangement for mutual advantage. To take action with regard versus something chancy.
I'm going to give my witness statement in a moment where I will say what I sensed and what I felt as I heard Rosalee's words. You can take a moment to notice what you sensed and what you felt as well. I want to begin with a question. It felt like your bread was a definition, but I don't know what you were defining. So could you tell me?
Yes, 2 words. The first word was dealer, which goes to deal in the dictionary. There's a bunch of definitions for it, but the 2 that stood out as bold to me were an arrangement for mutual advantage and to take action with regard. And then gamble, the definition that stood out to me was something chancy.
I'm curious for you to say a little bit more about why those definitions stood out to you, if you want to.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a gambler. If somebody has an attitude of something chancy, that is just a particular way of being in the world that was similar to how I felt my mother was in the world. She was always after something chancy that was more interesting to her than an arrangement for mutual advantage or to take action with regard. To have those definitions versus something chancy is a shorthand or a silly, light-handed version of what I think I wrote. It just distilled it down for me. The sentence, she was a gambler, not a dealer. She was never a dealer. That's an absurd thought that she should go to Vegas and be a blackjack dealer. She would never have succeeded at that because she wasn't a dealer. She was a gambler. That just felt like it meant more than the obvious. And so I was like, what is a dealer and what is a gambler? And then to really see that I'm all about arrangements that are for mutual advantage. That's my whole deal. I only take action with regard. So I am a dealer and she was a gambler. I wrote in the last entry that I take the risk. Now I have to look. The risks I'm willing to take. I'm not doing chancy shit. There are risks I'm willing to take. There's vulnerability and openness, but it's not a chancy way of being. It just isn't. It's a very clear command. I hold command at the table. That's just who I am in any situation. Very different energy than gambler energy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said more about it because it's really cool to hear more of what was underneath the surface of the words. I think Chancy to me feels like careless, that there's this careless quality to it, and that can be fun or it can be desperate, is the feeling that I get from those words and from hearing you talk a little bit more about it. And that the dealer has this commanding presence and knows, I mean, I'm not going to say they know everything, but they might. They know a lot and they see both sides of the table and they understand the workings of the whole place, not just what's right there. It's not just the chips on the table, but it's everything. I love how that fits with you because it does feel really, really true. When you were writing about wanting to talk about expanding photo readings and seeing this connection to the gambling, at first I was like, how? Where? Show me that connection. And you did. And I don't know how it's going to unfold, but it feels exciting and really insightful and kind of fun to come at it from this kind of angle. I feel excited for you.
Thank you. To be clear, this definition and connection came out in the writing. The connection I was writing about in my meat was a totally different connection. What I ended up talking about in these recordings that didn't save was how my parents would take me to the casino when I was a child and I couldn't go in. So I had to just sit outside and wait for hours upon hours while my mom was inside playing blackjack. During that time, I was people watching with my dad, and I thought I was just making up stories about people, but in hindsight, I really think I was reading them and just telling my dad information about these people, because I would see somebody from across the room and I'd be like, they're not actually married. They're having an affair. They're married to different people. We would comment on people's hair. We would just have this time together that is so bizarre and strange for a child. That reminded me of being a toddler and being in the diner and looking out the window with my dad and predicting would a car or a truck drive by and which way would it be going and what color would it be? We made these predictions during the last 5 years of his life when we'd be waiting for a doctor's appointment or waiting for the transport van to come. It was just a lot of waiting. We would do kind of the same thing. And so I brought it up to him and said, do you remember when we would do this at the casino? I asked him flat out, were you training me? Was that part of some kind of intentional plan for me to connect to my intuition or connect to predictions? It developed certain characteristics that I definitely use today doing photo readings. The very early beginnings were there, and he was like, no, I wasn't, that was not an intentional plan. It seems like it now, but no, it was bonding time. We were just passing the time together. That's what I have thought, okay, well, that's here. That's my memory. That's what's current. Instead of me trying to get there to talk about something, if I just start talking about what's present here in my awareness, that was the connection. But then to write it and to read it back and go, there's actually something else here that is more profound to me and feels even more clear about my position now and how I feel about photo readings and how I feel about myself and how I just move through the world. And that's really cool. And it was unexpected. So that was a connection that came out of Plumb Practice.
I love hearing you describe all the parts of what was happening for you and what came up when and how it came together, because it feels inspiring to hear you say, well, I just decided to be with what was coming up. And then for this connection to come out of it, it's inspiring and it's really cool. It is a rare experience to get to witness someone else's inner experience and then to also get to hear them talk about that inner experience. It's like when you're experiencing art in whatever form, that you'll see the finished product, but you don't always get to hear the artist give you their analysis of how it happened. And so I think that's a really special experience, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Well, thank you.
I am wondering if you're feeling differently about trying again to make TikToks. Do you feel like what happened here in your writing and with the bread and the definitions, does it feel like it gave you something new to go from?
It did, or it does. I still don't actually know how I'm going to talk about this. If I continue my belief that anything, I could talk about my mother's gambling could connect to what I want to talk about. I can start anywhere. I can say anything. I could pick a random word and that could be the prompt and I could eventually get there. There is always here. So if I just start where I'm at, it will unfold. It will make sense trying to plan it out or trying to figure it out or get the words right or say it in the right way or not say it this way. That is what I think stops us a lot of the time is, well, I don't know how. Well, it does anything. Just, and I guess that maybe could feel a little chancy. It could feel like I'm taking a gamble by just starting with something. This new clarity and these definitions and this versus, this feeling of like, oh, there's a difference here. There's contrast here. There's something that is very clearly not that, but this just gives me a little bit more strength in my belief that I could start anywhere and that it isn't careless at all. It's actually really skilled, knowing the layout of the building, knowing where the cameras are, knowing how many chips in here and whatever. So multitasking and zoomed out, the skill of that, keeping all of that going, and then also having fun playing the game. I actually can do that. So I'm going to do that when it comes to this.
This also feels connected to all doors open to the same thing. So that also feels exciting because it's another way to say something that we have already said feels important and profound and true.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so. I'm excited to hear your writing.
All right. As you listen to my writing, listen for yourself. Notice what you sense and what you feel as you hear my words. I'm going to begin with my bread. I have a long history of making appointments with myself and keeping them. I have also appointed myself as this or that, but always with an eye turned outward. Who agrees? Flow with this experience. This isn't the prompt I'm choosing, but it feels like a good reminder because I'm coming into this writing a little bit irritable, a little bit annoyed. It's all little stuff, but I can feel it buzzing around me like mosquitoes. I don't want to write about being annoyed. I wanted to write from the prompt, appoint myself. So I'll start there, but I'm telling myself right out of the gate, this doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to mean anything. One reason I hesitated to pick this prompt is it feels big and important, and what if what I write doesn't measure up? So I'm starting out by appointing myself the master of nonchalance, the master of casual, the master of play, of relaxing and letting go. I'm already second guessing my word choices. Not master. How about something like king? I'm not going to get snagged here. I like King. It's the name of a character in a cartoon show I'm watching with one of the kids. I like how King appoints himself as the authority or the ruler of whatever he's doing. Authority, that's a good word. And of course, it has author in it. I could appoint myself the author of my own story. I like that, but it also feels cliche, something you'd see on a motivational quote picture. But it is a good quote. I want to flow with this experience, and it feels like I'm lightly arguing with myself. Arguments can have flow, back and forth, give and receive and release. I would like to write something more specific, but there's nothing very specific coming up. A long time ago, when my kids were quite young, I set up a desk in a corner of our unfinished basement. Cement floors, boxes and bins stacked, cobwebs between the studs of the unfinished wall. It was the laundry room. I set up a lamp and could close the door. I wrote in the early mornings down there, a small scrap of time where I'd try to piece together stories, bits of fiction. I wrote some things, but I suppose it was the act of taking that space, making an appointment with myself, appointing myself a writer. That was the important part. I've always carved out spaces and pockets of time that are mine, just for me. It never felt like enough. I always wanted more. Now the demands on my time are different, but the days are still stacked with obligation. I still find scraps and pockets. I have a long history of making appointments with myself and keeping them. I have also appointed myself as this or that, but always with an eye turned outward. Who agrees?
Is there anything that you would like to say about your writing or how you feel?
No.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question about it. Was it a frustrating experience? Did you feel like you were stopping and starting when you were writing?
I think there were, I mean, you could hear moments where I was like, I don't know, shimmying into something else or talking to myself.
I am asking you because it didn't sound stop and start. It didn't sound like you were shimmying around into something else. You wrote about it, but it didn't sound that way. It very much felt like there was flow to it and that you were the king of the experience, or that you were just going like, no, and then moving. It felt very authoritative that you were choosing the direction you wanted to go. I thought it was really great and felt more profound than I think. Well, that's the thing. Okay, I have this experience with you so often where you'll say something and I can tell that you think you didn't say anything that was that important. And I'm like mind blown emojis and just going, you have no idea what you just said. You just said such important things. I feel that in this writing, but I think you actually know, and especially that the last part, but I think the whole thing, that there's something, okay, I'm going to be bold, but it feels like the turn of a page or something different. There's a different tone. You sound clear and that you have authority, and that it didn't sound. I'm trying to figure out how to say it because it's not like your writing in the past has felt wishy-washy or uncertain or anything like that. Not at all. But there are pieces of writing where I know that there's a shimmying happening, like you said. And this I couldn't tell. And so it's like, well, what is that if not some shift in esteem or regard or confidence or clarity? The fact that you said that you keep appointments with yourself, that has been consistent throughout your life. And it just feels like you're seeing it, or you're acknowledging it, or you're claiming it, or declaring it, or just telling the story differently, seeing it in a different way. That it's like with all the children and all the things, you still created an environment and a space and time, and then you were there. You kept it.
Yeah, think I think I can maybe name what you are trying to say that it feels like you don't think you can say or you're stepping around. Is that I think in the past there would be this like undertone or undercurrent, maybe is the word I'm looking for. I'm not sure if this is true, but this is what I think it is. If a wave is coming in and also there's a suck back at the same time, and that creates some undertow. And if you're swimming and you're out there, you can really get in a dangerous spot because this undertow can suck you the other direction. What I'm trying to say is, I think that in the past, when I've wanted to acknowledge myself and say, this is something that I did, or this is who I am, that it felt like it came with this undertow feeling of modesty in a way, or, well, it's not that great, or everyone else can do that, or something like that. Not wanting to be too bold. I think you can be humble without undercutting yourself all the time.
That's exactly it. And I think the undercurrent, undercutting, sucking a different direction, that is so exactly what I was trying to say. There wasn't any of that in this. It was just going one direction. It's like, yeah, humble for who? Who benefits?
Yeah. And nobody benefits when you make yourself smaller. It seems like I think that's really common.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pervasive thing that a lot of people experience. I'm not going to try to figure out all of society. I'll just stick with myself.
Like I said, it feels like a turn of the page. It feels like a new, fresh eyes, fresh ears, fresh perspective, fresh position. I keep saying it's not going to be like a grand opening day, so it's not that. There's no banners, there's no whatever. It looks the same on the outside as it typically does. You're reading, you're writing, but it feels different.
Well, I think the turn of the page feels like the perfect analogy because it's the same notebook. The pages look the same. You're still doing the same thing. You're still reading the words or writing them down, but there can be these line in the sand moments or a turn of the page or a turn of the head where you're just seeing something slightly differently, but it does change everything. And it's subtle and it helps to have a friend notice it and witness it, you know?
It is subtle and it's incremental. And I think that that is a part of the beauty and the why it works the way that it does, because it almost feels like nothing has happened, or maybe almost feels like nothing has changed. You don't have to achieve anything or effort for anything. It's a shift in your being. It's not a change in your doing, but it's seeing yourself differently and being willing to not undercut yourself or not be taken out in that undertow and sucked into the head down, sort of like, well, forget it. Don't look at me. Not, and instead it's like, no, I said what I said. That's what I meant. That's huge. That's powerful. It is so subtle, but it's felt. And I just think will continue to make a difference in ways that we can't even imagine yet. That's so exciting.
And it just makes me want to say, if you are ever wondering what is in your subtle energy, I have a friend that you can talk to. Well, you don't even have to say a word. You can just book that session with Rosalee and have that photo reading.
Just let me see that face.
For me, in conversation with you all the time, since you are my friend, you do offer me these perspectives and witnessing of things that I don't notice because I'm just doing the things and saying the things, but you're also reading my energy. And that's a gift and a privilege that I am so happy to have. And that the photo reading is this path to that for anyone who wants it. And I think that's amazing.
Thank you. It is so cool. And it is a gift for me that you want it, that you want my witness statements, that you want me to share what I feel. Your willingness to be my friend and be witnessed by me and be seen. You're not hiding from yourself and you're not hiding from me. And I think that that is so wonderful. And you still have your privacy, and I don't look at everything, but I notice. I'm listening to your sound. I notice when you sound different, and you sound different, and I'm so excited and proud of you.
Well, thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to say or discuss about your writing?
I did want to point out that when you were saying, I'm not sure if it was in your writing or when you were talking about the dealer, I just felt you had appointed yourself the dealer. And so that felt like a connection between our two writings where I have this appointment feeling that I'm writing about, and to have it come up for you, you have appointed yourself the dealer.
I think it's really special and important that we do use different analogies and metaphors and different words to describe sometimes the same feeling. The feeling that I'm talking about, to now have the word dealer attached to it, just is a turn of the head, a turn of the page. It just has me look at the same sensation slightly differently. And it's that incremental shift. If you're in a position and you're looking at something, if you move slightly over to one side or the other, it opens up a new perspective of what you can see. Or if you were behind a corner or something, or a pole or a post was in the way, and you just moved a little bit and now you can see the whole thing and there's nothing obstructing your view. That can happen. You were trying on different words and going like, okay, yeah, it's not this word, it's not quite this word, but this is the feeling. This is the thing I know for sure, is that I have made appointments with myself and I've kept those appointments, and I have a history that I can look at and know that that's true. And would I call that king? Before today, wouldn't have thought I would identify as a blackjack dealer or any kind of dealer. That just wouldn't have been something I would have thought or said about myself. I don't know that I will be putting it on a business card or anything, but in this moment, it gave me a little perspective shift and clarity, and something that just feels really good. And that can be it. It can just feel good. And that can be enough. And it doesn't have to have a profound effect on your life. And I'm of the belief that the things that we wrote in this section of Plum Practice will make a difference for both of us. And it's, again, not something that we need to try or strive or effort to see. We don't have to remember it. We can just trust and believe that because we have claimed these things, because we have defined and acknowledged these different things about ourselves, we have them now. They like exist in our being now. There's nothing that has to be done with it. It's just, it is now.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. We loved listening to it, and we hope that you did as well, and that you heard something in it for yourself. If you'd like to experience the starting point for this conversation for yourself, check out our website for the Plumb Practice Series called Water. And you can also join our membership and get a new session of Plumb Practice every week. You can also check out our free Plumb Practice session called The Mirror. If you are inspired by my testimonial of how wonderful, interesting, and healing it is to be witnessed by Rosalee, you can check out our website and book a Plum Point intuitive photo reading with Rosalee. It is an amazing experience, and you will be seen.
The Plum Collective is the dream of my life. Thank you for making my dreams come true by listening to this podcast. Subscribe and follow us on social media for more. We're going to keep having these interesting, authentic conversations and creating the space for you to do the same.